Another year, another Christmas rolls around with a bunch of holiday specials on TV, both new and old. And since you guys liked last year's look at Rankin movies on this channel, it's only right I do the next 4 movies produced by the Rankin Company. But this year, I decided for at least a few of these entries to do something a little bit different with how I handle it. And when we get to my thoughts on them, you'll see why. One more thing before we begin though. One detail I forgot to bring up in last year's installment that Matthew pointed out in the comments was that Rankin also made the original Thundercats show back in the 80s, as well as created the animated Hobbit / Return of the King films. So a big thank you, Matthew, for pointing this out. I really do appreciate it, and I'm very sorry for not bringing that up in the last Rankin video and going over the company's history. I legit forgot about that detail, so whoops. Yeah, I don't have a clever segue from that, so how about we get right into the first film? 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. What a disappointing start, featuring characters flatter than no-name Pop-Tarts. The story wasn't interesting and paced without a care. Needless to say, this left the film's ending and character development in such disrepair. Albert was an unlikable shit and changed his ways too easily, and when the clock was ruined, I knew this film's length was getting a little chubby. I sat back in my chair after the visuals gave me a slap. The colors, backgrounds, characters, and movement, it was all utter crap. I paused the film a few times because my ears needed to be assessed, because the film's score was an unbearable, nasty mess. Away to the sink I flew like the wind, with down a cloth for my ears before they were further sinned. Out of the corner of my eye I saw newly fallen snow. Maybe a snowball fight could relieve my eyes and ears for a bit. Ho ho ho. When I returned, I saw the main characters lost a lot and looked worse for wear. A pity they were so flat and uninteresting, I couldn't even muster up one singular care. But the little shit from earlier came up with a new trick. He would fix the clock to redeem the town in the eyes of St. Nick. Sadly, the suspense of that couldn't keep my attention. Because it was a Christmas film, these usually end with positive intentions. As Santa was ready to pass by the town that was so unkind, the clock had rung, and Santa had changed his mind. How dramatically convenient with an ending I saw coming, and the ending didn't feel deserved. It just felt crummy. And then, in a twinkling, the movie had reached its end. It had about story, characters, music, and animation. As all of it flew in my head and was spinning around, I shook my head in anger. What a waste of time and sound. More effort was put into the poem that inspired this. How could this adaptation do a job that's filled with poor quality piss? Most Christmas movies fill me with some kind of cheer, but this movie has nothing, like an empty can of beer. No charm, no good characters, no great holiday music. Poor pacing, poor writing, a bad ending? What a jip! This bit has been going on for a very long time. I should probably end it here. Stop it on a dime. So I spring to my keyboard, my fingers prepared, to type away my thoughts on this movie. It shall not be spared. So it's time to exclaim as I finish this right. Happy holidays to all, and fuck 'twas the night. Adapted from a book of the same name, this film is about Santa quitting Christmas because kids don't believe in him anymore. And yet, this announcement gets published in several newspapers, confirming that Santa is real in this universe, and thus people still believe in him enough to publish this information, but who needs that pesky thinking / logic when we can spend half the movie wasting time finding a kid that believes in Santa, and then the rest of it getting home, capped off with Santa ditching his vacation because he made one girl cry in a letter. Can you tell I hate the story yet? Because it's so stupid, poorly paced, and gets resolved so fucking easily that it's insulting to my intelligence and me as a viewer. This whole issue could be resolved in 2 seconds, and yet it drags on for 50 minutes. What makes it worse is that the solution, just get someone else to be Santa, is actually considered, but is dropped because 2 of the most incompetent elves I've seen in these movies spot Mrs. Claus as Santa, and then Mrs. Claus is like, nah, this idea is bad. Even though most kids would be asleep when you go down the chimney, and as your song dictates, you wouldn't let people see you from the front anyways. This movie is dumb. Speaking of dumb, let's talk about Mr. Claus. So he decides to not give kids gifts because he's sick and thinks no one believes in him anymore. Yet when he finds out Jingle and Jangle went out with Vixen to find a kid, he gets up out of his bed and races towards the 3 as if he was perfectly fine. Hell, the end just gives further credence to my theory that Santa's just faking it, as after he reads that letter, he decides to forgo his vacation and say that he's never better. This version of Santa is basically the kid who fakes being sick so he can play video games all day. Even the animation isn't all that great. The models aren't as good as Rudolph or Santa Claus is coming to town. The animation's pretty stiff and glitchy at points. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the animation either. What a shame. Hell, one of the only things I like about this movie is the Miser Brothers song, and even that has its issues thanks to the visuals and models used in said song. And the funny thing is, this song and the Miser Brothers themselves, not in the original book. So if this was not even inserted into the adaptation, it's very likely this film would have been easily forgotten in terms of holiday classics, because this song, well, good, seems to be one of the only few things people know of the most when talking about this film. That is depressing. Every other song is either forgettable or as crappy singing, i.e. the song Anyone Can Be Santa. I'm sorry, but it sounds like the actress is more saying the lyrics as her character instead of singing the lyrics as her character. In other words, it sounds like she isn't putting in much passion into the performance of the song. Yeah, this was not fun at all. It was boring, terrible. It made me apathetic towards the holiday of Christmas. The exact opposite of what these kinds of films should do to a person. I should be happy about Christmas, happy to spend time with family and wrap gifts for them and the like. So fuck this movie. I'm gonna go watch a good holiday special, and then I'm gonna come back and look at the next film in the Rankin Bass catalog.
And a one, and a two, and a three.
Vocal percussion on a whole nother level.
For the first time in this marathon, I found a Rankin Bass movie that's not good, bad, or even decent, but rather white noise. So the story is about a shepherd who gets blinded by lightning that causes a tree branch to fall twice in a matter of minutes, and spends some time at a church while he recovers, and then at the end he gets his sight back and stays in the church. It's not bad or great, it was just, But like I said earlier with Bree's analogy, it's really nothing memorable or anything to write home about, which also makes it hard to talk about. Even this paragraph feels like I'm trying too hard to explain my thoughts on the story. The music, like last time, is incredibly forgettable, and unlike the last time, it doesn't have the Miser Brothers to come in and give at least one good song to listen to. I guess they were too busy preparing for that spin-off that took a few decades to come out. You know what? Screw it. I'm ending this entry early. All I'm doing is padding this out, and I'm sure it's boring you two hearing me stretch on my thoughts on what's ultimately a forgettable movie to me. So why don't we just move on to the last movie and just chuck this film in the bargain bin where it belongs. Finally! A film that makes me feel something again! And that feeling is disappointment. Of all the Rankin Bass movies so far, why was Frosty, the one that had no sequel song, mind you, given a sequel and a wife? I guess they took the Back Again Someday part of the original song too seriously, because Frosty is the only thing returning in terms of the cast, because none of the original characters from the first movie are back, nor is the villain Hinkle. Instead, we get Jack Frost, who is pissy that Frosty stole all the fame from him, even though he only showed up in one town, had left for a few years, and Jack barely makes any public appearances for people to make songs out of. Speaking of stupid, remember how the first movie showed that if Frosty lost his magic hat, he'd revert to a regular snowman? Well, that does happen in this movie after Jack steals the hat, but then this condition's ignored when his girlfriend Crystal makes a snowflower and gives him love, and then he gets the hat back anyways. So, what was the point of that scene exactly? Now there's no reason to feel any concern/tension for Frosty, because now if he loses his hat, magic love flowers can bring him back. This feels like something I'd write, not someone putting this out for consumers to buy. Speaking of Crystal, she was an incredibly forgettable character in this, outside of being interested in Frosty, and having a couple lines telling Jack Frost he's important since he gives them the winter they need to survive. But then again, Jack Frost and Frosty were also incredibly bland and uninteresting in this movie in terms of plans/personalities, so it's not like this is an issue exclusive to the new character Crystal, or the kids that show up in this film. I'd say the backgrounds have more personality than these kids, but that's too easy for me to say, and I don't want to lower my qualities to this film's levels, even if that's probably too late for me. Speaking of low, music is once again forgettable/bland. Even their cover of Winter Wonderland isn't up to par in terms of performances from the singers Andy Griffith, who also played Frosty, and Dennis Day. It's just not my cup of tea, unfortunately. But, hey, the animation's slightly better than the last Frosty movie. Probably because there isn't as many animation errors as that one. It's just a pity I can't say the same about the rest of this film. Frosty's Winter Wonderland is a slight improvement in terms of animation, but everything else about it is worse than before, and the issue of the short runtime causing the story and character arc/development to feel rushed is once again present here. Like the last Frosty movie, I don't recommend this film to anyone this holiday season, nor do I recommend the other three I covered in this volume. Which is really sad, because I loved Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and I thought the studio could only improve as time went on. But, as I showcase here today, the opposite happened. And that's a shame. But, hey, just because I found some coal from this company doesn't mean I can't still find some gold at the end of this rainbow. I mean, Rudolph and Santa were great, and I highly recommend those this holiday season, so maybe the next time I look at the Rankin Bass films, we'll find more gold than coal. Only time will tell. Special thanks to my patrons, and until we meet again, I'm David Grimm, and have a great day, everyone.